now seek a power beyond themselves worthy of praise and worship. Isaiah, hearing the passionate praises and worship directed to God, responded by accepting the call to become God's messenger. As Isaiah began the narratives of his ministerial calling, he set the date as in the year that King Uzziah died. The death of King Uzziah serves as a time reference for Isaiah's vision by giving the historical context. According to Isaiah, although his body is inside the temple, his soul is taken up to heaven, and there he saw a magnificent vision of God and the heavenly host. Isaiah recounts seeing the Lord himself seated upon a throne. And that brings us to our key verse for today, which reads, "They were calling out to each other, 'Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of heaven's armies. The whole earth is filled with his glory.'" Isaiah chapter 6, verse 3. The scene is all the more frightening to Isaiah as he witnessed the seraphims standing in God's presence, worshiping and serving him. The Hebrew word here used for God's messengers places an emphasis on the fact that God is utterly holy. The seraphim must appear to Isaiah like living fire, standing above the throne waiting to serve God. With one pair of wings, the seraphim cover their eyes lest they peer into the divine, and with another pair they cover their feet in humble acknowledgement that they stand upon holy ground. Isaiah now sees himself more clearly as an unclean creature, dwelling in the midst of rebellious creatures. Every utterance of the seraphs confirms for Isaiah that God is holy. God is utterly transcendent. He is so far above and distinct from his created beings that none is truly worthy to be in his presence. God's holiness is central to God's identity, and it is one of God's primary attributes that permeates all of the others, such as love, sovereignty, omnipotence, etc. Amid these characteristics of God, his glory fills the whole earth, and so it's impossible to escape God's presence. Isaiah gives voice to what he is feeling. The word woe in Hebrew is we, and it stands for a passionate cry of grief or despair. Seeing all that transpires around him, he declares himself and his people guilty before God and prepares for his death. He was undone or on the verge of perishing in the face of this revelation of God. Faced with the experience of God's holiness, Isaiah recognized his own sinfulness with equal clarity. From within the midst of the cloud-filled chamber, Isaiah is only able to see a seraph use a pair of tongs and remove a burning coal from the altar. The living being then proceeds toward Isaiah with the coal and presses it against his mouth. For the first time, Isaiah realizes what it feels like to be fully cleansed of all sin and shame. The text here refers not only to sin, but also iniquity, which refers to depravity, perversity, and the guilt from sin. Rather than the expected punishment, God has pardoned Isaiah. Rather than the deserved death, eternal separation from God, Isaiah is given life and begins to experience God's love in a way he has never understood before. He is truly and completely loved. With the sin and shame now removed, Isaiah is now able for the first time to hear God speak. Isaiah hears God inquire who would be God's servant to go and carry out the mission and message he had for his covenant people. Isaiah answers the call. God's assignment meant loneliness and isolation, yet because of the vision of God's glory, Isaiah willingly paid this price. So here's our lesson. It is only after we truly encounter God that we will see ourselves clearly. Only God, through his Son Jesus Christ, can cleanse and forgive us of our sins, so we can enter into his presence and worship him in spirit and in truth. No matter where we are, at home, in the car, at work, school, or church, we are able to set the atmosphere for worship and honor the presence of God through our praise.